Hello there. Experimental Socket here to just bring you a little walkthrough of how my process works and how I work in FL Studios, the things I do to make a little quality of life improvements here and there. And let's just get right into it. I'm going to be aiming this tutorial or just showcase rather at somebody that has never used FL Studios before. So when you first open up FL Studios, it's actually going to look a bit different than this. You're going to get four little patterns in it right away, or not patterns, but you can get four instruments like the kick, snare, clap, and hi-hat. Don't use those. I would automatically go new from template into minimal and just go for empty, so you can just start with your own sounds. The very first thing you're going to want to do before you even open up FL Studio is go to Cymatics, cymatics.com, and you're going to want to download at least one of their packs. Just start off with the hip hop pack. That's what we'll use today. If you don't know how to get these packs in FL Studios, basically once you've downloaded them, you're going to go into file settings, and then you're going to go through here and you're going to find out exactly, just click this little button, you're going to find exactly where it is. You can click on the folder, press OK, bing bang boom. Those sounds are now in FL Studios, and if they did not show up, just restart FL Studios and try again. So let's go straight into how I would start making a beat. Very rarely do I start with drums. Quite typically, I'll start with a melody, whether it's from a sample or if it's a melody I'm creating myself. So here I'm just going to open up an instrument from the Roland Cloud suite of instruments. If you have not heard of that before, I'd very highly recommend checking it out. It is a little more on the expensive side, but you do get all the digital versions of the Roland instruments, and I think it is quite a valuable investment, in all honesty. You cannot replicate this quality of sounds, and Roland is a very reliable brand. It is coming directly from them. But anyways, we're just going to go. I'm going to switch my MIDI keyboard here, so it's just back to a regular keyboard. So I might be playing a little off key there. Honestly, my music theory isn't that great, and that's why this tutorial is going to be pretty great, because it's going to be geared towards people that don't really know music theory that well. So two ways I can start with the melody. I can either just start on a keyboard, kind of getting an idea. I think I hit the mic a little bit there, didn't mean to do that. And depending on exactly what kind of vibe I'm going for, we're going to aim for like a hip-hop, maybe trap-ish vibe today. We're going to go for kind of long increments in between notes. And what I mean by that is, so in our piano roll here, by the way, I am just playing notes on my MIDI controller. If you do not have a MIDI controller, or if you do not know how to set it up, you can just go through MIDI settings, bing bang boom. That should pretty much explain itself. But what we're doing here, we're going to open up the piano roll. Just press enter to make that guy full screen. I'm going to go, I'll talk about this in a second, what I just did there. But basically, this is how your keyboard is laid out. All these light parts, the light bars, as I like to call them, those are going to be all the white keys on your piano. All these dark ones are going to be the dark keys on your piano. You can change that so it kind of goes along with whatever scale you're in or whatever key you're in, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So what I kind of like to do is just go by ear and play two notes that are pretty far away from each other. So like you see C and then G sharp, they're 5 semitones away from each other, so 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess 4. My bad. There are 4 spaces from each other. Anyways, I like to kind of play that, and when you go from a higher note to a lower note, it's going to kind of be sad or dark. And that's the vibe we're going to go for. So, two ways you can do it. You can just record it into FL Studio, like so. So, that's one way to do it, or you can just color it in, like boom. Just to get a reference what I was hitting there. That was this one. Boom. And then, so we go up here, we're gonna make that note just a little shorter, and then it goes down here, boom. And sorry, just for reference, if you're using a MIDI controller and you want to record your notes in FL Studio, you are going to have to exit out this piano roll here. You're going to have to exit out, and you're going to have to come over here, and you're going to have to just click the record button. It's going to come up with a window and ask what you want to record. You're just going to click the one that says Notes and Automation. My MIDI keyboard is built for FL Studio, so it has record and play buttons and everything like that, so it just makes my life a little easier. So now that we have our main melody here, we're gonna we have our first pattern. Don't want it just be called pattern 1, so maybe we're gonna call it piano melody. You don't have to, but I like giving it a color so it is nice and pretty, just so it's visually appeasing. And another thing too, typically about my process is this this here would actually be set to 280 right now. So it'd actually be like this, and then the pattern would look more, it'd still be the same sound, and all the notes would still sound the same, the melody would still be the same, but we're just kind of stretching things out so everything is double the length it was before. And the reason I do this is so when I go to do my drums, you can actually still get really intricate drums, and you're not being held back by the amount of space you have in a bar. So that's our melody right there. We've actually spaced that a little incorrectly. Maybe we want to go there. There we go. Just like that. Boom. So now we have our melody. So the next thing I'm going to move on to is drums. Just going to quickly rename this to piano. And what's nice is once you've already selected a color, I usually like to go in here and kind of select custom colors. Once you've selected that color, it's automatically going to pop up on this little bar right here for you to select again. So once you name that, you can color that, but you don't have to do colors, so it's just what I like to do. On to the next thing. Like I said, you do want to have at least some kind of sound. I'm going to use just straight out of the hip hop pack. In all honesty, those aren't the best kicks, and I probably wouldn't use any of those kicks, but we'll take this kick and we'll do something real quick to make it sound nice. So we're gonna switch over to my drum setting on my MIDI controller, and then this is just a little trick I have, something I learned from busyworksbeats.com. Turn everything down except for the hold, and then you just kind of play with the hold until you get the sound that you want. And then we can play with this knob right here as long as it's set to fast LP, which is low pass. That's a bit of theory, I won't go too far into that. But that's going to keep like the low, the bassy part of our kick while getting rid of the high part that kind of resonates there with it. So we can still kind of have the big punch to it. Next, go into this final window here, turn the volume up. Big thing is don't be afraid to have your kicks really loud. Don't be afraid to have them clipping a bit. That is what a lot of professionals do in the studio, is they actually have their kicks up very, very loud and then kind of balance them out in the mastering process, just so the kick can make it through everything. Just play back and forth between these two knobs until you kind of get like a relatively okay sounding kick. So what I usually do is I'm gonna play drums live along to this. So let's just throw I don't know, just an okay snare. I guess that's okay. So I would just play like, but if you don't have a MIDI controller, what you can do is you can press F4, you can make a new pattern, You don't have to make new patterns for every instrument, but I would highly recommend it, because once you actually get into the process of making it into a song and you want to change little things, you don't want to be going into a pattern and having to figure out exactly which pattern's which. And that's also why I named them, because if you have pattern like 1, 2, 3, 4 up to like a pattern 1,000, you're gonna have to remember the numbers of which one's which. And every time you create a new pattern, or like say you take this pattern and you clone it, so you have the same pattern but it's named something slightly different. So say if you change something, you add a note, that's gonna be different between the two patterns. If you continue to do that and you don't name your patterns, you're just gonna end up with like 100 patterns, and you're gonna have no idea what is going on where. But if you just want to make drums straight on FL Studio, you can go through the channel rack here. Your FL Studio might not look exactly like mine, but you can change things. You can resize it to however you like. I don't recommend just staying in 1 bar for the drums. I would definitely try to go for the 8 bar, which realistically actually looks like this. Because keep in mind, I'm producing in double time, so each one of these is actually a half of a bar. So when the metronome's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's actually going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2. Again, that's music theory. Don't need to get too far into that. So there you go, just a little drum pattern. Our clap isn't quite loud enough, so we're going to kind of do the same thing that we did to the kick to this. Get it to the loudness that we want. Sorry, getting a little phlegm in my throat there. It's a little gross. I'm sorry. Gonna just rename and recolor these things. And another reason I color these things personally is because my controller, I have a mode where I can play each one of these things on the controller, and the controller actually lights up. If you don't know what an Akai Fire is, look it up. Super useful if you're planning on using FL Studios, especially if you're making beats. I would definitely recommend getting one. So we kind of have what ends up happening is the beat sounds very, very robotic. So everything's exactly on time, and we don't really want that. Okay. Well, what you can do is, if you're stuck in this situation, you don't have a MIDI controller, you can just click on the items, go to here. Even in instruments that aren't native to FL Studio, they'll still have the settings window, and you can turn this time shift up. The important thing to note is look up here when you're modifying this knob. That's going to tell you how much the knob is actually modifying the actual value. So, for example, here's 1 second, and you can kind of hear the piano is kind of delayed. But if I turn it up like way to 7 seconds. That doesn't actually sound. Sometimes it won't work, especially with instruments, but just with individual sounds. Like, notice how slow the kick is. It falls really behind the beat. So you don't want to go that far, obviously. Just kind of like 1 second, maybe 2, depending. But you want to take everything kind of off the grid. And that's actually why I like playing things live as well, like with my controller. Because opposed to this kind of static and having to like copy and paste things, what I can do is just go cut, boom, boom, press record on my controller, press play. Ooh, messed that up. Try that again. And mess that up again. What's really nice about this controller is I can press play, I can stop, and then I can use my keyboard really quickly to undo what I just did and start recording again. So just constantly trying out the same idea doesn't take that long at all. And also, what ends up happening here is there's a lot more variation in each bar. One thing you may want to do if you're doing that, if you are playing your drums live, maybe switch to like bar mode or something, and you press Shift D, and that's going to discard the length of the note you played. So if you played it a little too short and say the full snare sample or the full kick sample didn't come out, you do this and it comes out. So like the kick where you have these little bits, what you can do is you can press E to switch to your selector tool, hold Shift so you can select all these little bits that didn't quite become long enough. Use this little magnet up here to switch it to how big you want it, maybe a little bigger, a beat, and then press Shift D, boom. And now those kicks sound full instead of cut off. So now we have our beat, we have a melody. Next thing I'm probably going to add in, kind of depends, probably going to add in a hi-hat. We're just going to go real simple for the hi-hat. You can look up how to do hi-hats a billion different ways. Nice, easy way to do hi-hats is right-click it and you can just fill each 2 steps. And especially if you have a pattern already laid out, the hi-hats are actually going to go the whole length. And again, because I'm producing in double time, I probably actually want to fill each 4 steps instead of each 2. Do the same thing to my hi-hats that I did to the kick and snare, just so we can get a nice crisp sound and it comes through. What's also really nice about this method is you can either go through here and do it, or just open up your piano roll, because you already have it all laid out for you. You just go in a half beat and first select just one of the notes on the grid. So when you place another note, it's going to be the exact same length and velocity, but you can just add in these little spaces. Just add in those little spaces. You can add a little couple notes and go throughout your whole hi-hats that way. And then you can have basically a varied hi-hat pattern the whole way. Honestly, I never play my hi-hats live because they're too precise, and I usually end up just rearranging them in the piano roll anyways. So I just do them straight into the channel rack and have nice and ready hats. So now we're going to go into 808s. The biggest thing about an 808 is you kind of have to make sure it is in tune with the melody you're using. Again, this is only going to really apply to trap producers, but that's kind of primarily what I do anyways. As you can see, our scale highlighting isn't quite accurate, so what we got to do is go into our helpers here, go into scale highlighting, and then we're just going to kind of play around until we find something that works with the notes we're using, that has the light bars in all the notes we're using. So into helpers, scale highlighting, maybe minor melodic. Nope, that doesn't work. By the way, if you don't want this to reset every time, you can right click and it will switch without exiting out of this little drop down menu here. What you also have the option to do, keep in mind, is you can just move one note and see how it sounds. If you like that sound, you can go with it. I did not like that at all. Let's try this. No, I do want to keep it at the G5. So we're going to keep going through these until we find something that works. And that almost works. Again, if we try. There you go. See, you just got to move a couple notes. It's still basically the same melody, just slightly different. And we found a key that works. So to quickly tune your 808, I'm lucky enough to have it so it tells me exactly what note the 808 is playing, and it is just C. and no matter what, your 808 is going to start in C. But say if you didn't know, you could just right click this, edit an audio editor, go into here, regions, detect pitch regions down there, and it's going to tell you right here it's C. You can kind of ignore what's at the end here because like as the 808 fades out, the waveform kind of changes, and this program just doesn't know exactly how to treat that. But anyways, the beginning starts with C. So say for example it wasn't C, say it was A, all we'd have to do is go down here and just right click it so it is now A instead of C, which actually A is down here, root note right here. So you can just look right there to make sure you're actually picking the right key. I've done that more than once, showing my ignorance in music theory. Anyways, I find one quick simple way to do your 808s is just taking your kicks, right clicking, copy, and paste. But you might want to set this to cut itself. And then one other thing you're going to want to do is instead of playing with it here to see how you want it to sound, turn your hold all the way up. So what this is basically doing is the 808 is only going to play for exactly as long as you have it here. Whereas if you kind of leave it as is, say if you even have the 808 as just like one of these little notes, it's still going to play until another note plays. So let's go back to our 808. That is not our 808. We have something else here. There we go. So in order to change this, we can just hold Alt and move that. Change the notes around, just play around with it. Okay, so usually I wouldn't actually change up the 808 that much, so we can just leave it as it being that long, half the amount of time as the rest of the stuff, and I'll show you how we work with that now. So very quickly, I'm going to break this down. We're going to press F4 to create a new pattern. Going to rename that hats first. Going to deal with those because I do like to separate my hi-hats so we can change them up every now and again. Just right click, cut, right click, paste, boom, F4, create a new pattern, 808. Switch it to black because I do like black for my 808s. They are dark, they are heavy. That is the feeling I get when I hear an 808. So cut, paste, and again because the 808s are just half the length, you're going to have to copy it over. But bing, bang, boom, you have a beat. And now what you can do is you can kind of vary this to come in as you want it to. I usually like doing something like this, the reverse staircase, so bringing in one instrument at a time. And we'll show you what that sounds like in just 1 second. Boom. Boom. So one important thing to note is you also don't have to line up your 808s with the kick either. What I might do is when it hits twice here, I might not hit the 808 again, but I'll still play it for the whole length. Because what ends up happening is the kick is going to kind of re-trigger the 808, so it sounds like it's playing twice anyways. Like it goes do-do-do-do, it still does the do-do. So we can just leave that in there like that, even when it plays over here. So that's cool. We'll just fix that real quick. And another thing to note is this is just the initial piano melody. What we can do is we can go through this and we can look at all the different sounds. We can find something maybe sounds a little cooler, sounds a little more fresh. This plugin typically isn't what I use for sounds, but it's just what we have open right now. And what I like playing with too is when you have a certain instrument and maybe you're not liking the sound that that instrument's producing, press Control A to select it all and hold Control and just press up. And it's going to bring it up an octave. That actually sounds really dope. But anyways, there you go. There is a short, informative video about my process in FL Studios. I hope it wasn't too long. Peace out.